Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Jim Nintzel, host of AZ Illustrated Politics, our weekly commentary and analysis of local, state, and national news. On tonight's show, more than 6,000 reports to Child Protective Services have gone uninvestigated in Arizona. We'll talk about why it happened and what it will take to fix CPS. Plus, we'll talk about the $13 million shortfall on Tucson's light rail project and ask whether the Tucson Unified School District can turn around its reputation. All that and more is coming up on AZ Illustrated Politics, but first, a look at today's top stories.
This weekend will be the coldest of the season so far, and for people without a permanent home, the low temperatures add stress to an already difficult situation. Tonight's low temperature for the Tucson area is expected to be about 37 degrees, and Sunday and Monday nights are expected to be near freezing. Shauna Crow with the Salvation Army told Arizona Public Media that last night was the first time this season for Operation Deep Freeze, an emergency plan that gives homeless people a warm place to sleep when temperatures drop below 35 degrees or 40 degrees when it's raining. The city of Tucson was named one of the top 10 digital cities in the United States. The Old Pueblo was tied for 8th with Mesa among cities with a population of 250,000 people or more. The ranking comes from the Center for Digital Government's 13th Annual Digital Cities Survey. Marana, Avondale, and Scottsdale also achieved top 10 rankings for cities with smaller populations. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next news hour, a report on Islamists in Syria, plus rock legend Carlos Santana. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
Tonight, Arizona Week examines the role of Child Protective Services in southern Arizona. What effect could the ongoing investigation have on community organizations that work with CPS?
So now our attention's on it. Okay, we missed this trend coming and it just hit us hard. And families are hurting in our state. And yet you can't just rebuild something that you've torn down for that many years overnight.
That's tonight at 8:30 on PBS 6.
This week, Governor Jan Brewer assembled an independent panel to look into how more than 6,500 reports to Child Protective Services went uninvestigated during her administration. Here to talk about how the CPS crisis is unfolding is Arizona Education Network President Ann-Eve Pedersen, Tucson Metro Chamber President and CEO Mike Varney, and Inside Tucson Business Editor Mark Evans. Thank you all for being here. Ann-Eve, this is the third group Governor Brewer has brought together to look into these cases. And how do you think we got here from where we were?
Well, I think clearly the state budget cuts that began in 2008 are to blame for where we are here with CPS. At that time, about 181 caseworkers were laid off, overtime was banned, and the caseloads continued to rise. But we didn't have the staff members to handle those caseloads. So what you started to see then were child deaths occurring, really beginning in 2011, 2012. Not beginning, they occur every year, but they started to really spike, and there were some very high-profile cases. At that time, the governor decided to appoint, one of her first task forces to look into what was going on. They came out with some recommendations, but clearly, what they're doing here is not working. There is a deficit between what is needed in terms of caseloads, for the caseworkers to be able to handle the rising caseloads. There's a huge deficit between what the state is funding and what they actually need. And at the same time that the state cut services for CPS, they also cut human services that help needy families. So there was a large reduction to child care assistance, to emergency aid for cash assistance for families. And so what you see happening from the time these cuts began until now is abuse cases staying pretty flat, but neglect cases, so kids without shoes, homes, enough food, supervision, spiking. Those have gone through the roof, and I think that can be directly related back to the lack of human services. We have a state surplus now. In effect, we have, with the rainy day fund and the regular state surplus, about $1.35 billion. I really hope in this coming session, the legislature will start to put that money back into human services so that we don't have kids suffering like this and we don't have kids dying. Since the recession, we've had 44 children die who were being supposedly looked out for by CPS. That's double what it typically would be during that time period. That's very, very, very disturbing. And I think the hotline case just reflects the overall broken system, but you're going to have legislators like Andy Biggs tell you the system's broken, they don't need any more money. Look, the system is broken because we have divested from taking care of the children in our community, and we need to reinvest urgently.
And Mark, we've got Democrats saying that, as Annie says, we need more funding for the system. You have Republicans saying that they're skeptical Governor Brewer can actually complete these investigations in the time that she set out to get that done. What do you think the political damage to Governor Brewer is here?
You know, I don't know. She's a lame duck of lame duckness, right? So when she got elected, because she's term limited, she's been a lame duck for her entire 4 years. But this is her last year in office. So she's going into the office with diminished political power to begin, or going into this year with diminished political power to begin with. So there's going to be a lot of battles, I think, coming up in the legislature this coming year. One of them being probably going to be even more funding for CPS. The other one, which is going to be related to the budget, there's going to be battles over the budget. And there's still the blowback from last year's Medicaid expansion. There's still a lot of hurt feelings in the legislature over that. So how that all plays out, and this on top of it, you know, I don't know. I think she was already politically damaged to begin with. This doesn't make it any better. But you know, if her political career, she has aspirations post being governor, she's got so many other things that she's going to have to deal with: SB 1070, the Medicaid expansion, and now this. I think this will probably be her last term in political office. But I've been wrong before.
And one of the things that Governor Brewer said was that there's a culture of secrecy in CPS, and I'm just wondering, do you think she's onto something there?
Oh, I mean, we've been talking about the secrecy in CPS for a long time, and Jonathan Payton, when he was in the legislature, he actually, and when we had a spate of kids being killed who had been under CPS care and nobody really knew what was going on and CPS wasn't releasing records, he got a bill passed under Janet Napolitano that was supposed to have provided some more transparency to CPS, that if in the cases of death, that they had to release the record. And so unless there was a particular circumstance, and so what CPS has been doing is claiming that particular circumstance in almost all issues. CPS has had a black shroud placed over their operation for, that's probably a bad image, but for years, and all the efforts that have been made to try and bring more transparency to CPS have mostly been failed, a lot of it because of just bureaucratic contraction. They just won't do it. And I think one of the ways we solve the problems in CPS is bringing more transparency to what it is they do, how they're doing it, and let people be able to judge whether that is effective or not, and we just don't see these kind of end results. For instance, 5 people have been suspended, supervisors were suspended this week, supposedly in connection to the 6,500 uninvestigated cases. We don't know who those investigators or who those supervisors are. They won't say because it's a personnel matter. We don't know what their involvement was, why they were suspended, what's going on. We have no idea. We just have to take the government's word for it that something's being done, and we have no idea. I think transparency is one of the best ways we're going to be able to straighten out the problem we have with CPS in the state.
And Annie, what is the solution to really straightening out what we've got going on here?
Well, the one good thing about a crisis is that it does present some opportunities to really fundamentally change something that has not been working for a while. There have been some very good recommendations that have been coming forward from legislators, from people involved in child welfare. One of them is really to take CPS out from under DES and create its own agency. That the thinking is that the DES director just really has too many other things to look into, and CPS really needs to be its own private entity that maybe reports directly to the governor's office. There was a suggestion by Senator Bradley that we expand that and make it sort of the Department of Youth Services, so we have other youth programs in there as well. I think we need more outside oversight. I don't think more necessarily legislative oversight councils are going to do the trick. The Auditor General also should be doing a heck of a lot more than they're doing right now. They should be doing regular, probably yearly 6-month performance audits of CPS, and I would suggest we bring in even an entity not even politically connected at all to take a really close look and make sure that the kids in our society be protected. But if we don't fund any of this, we're not going to solve the problem. We can't live in this never land where things don't come with a price tag. They do.
All right, and we're going to have a much deeper look at CPS and Arizona Week at 8:30 this evening with Michael Chihawk. I want to shift gears. Mike, this week the City Council was sworn into office, the new council, which is the same as the old council, coming off their win in the election last month. You've been here in Tucson for about 2.5 years now. Your thoughts on this Tucson City Council and this reputation they have for not being friendly to business?
Yeah. I would say that in general terms, Jim, that we've got to have a city council that becomes much more proactively supportive of business rather than laying in the background and kind of tolerating business. That may sound a little harsh, but we're surrounded by communities that have done an awful lot to make sure that anytime opportunity comes knocking, that they have a team of people there to make sure they capture that opportunity. I'm not sure I can say that about the city of Tucson, although, to be fair, I think that there have been a number of programs and policies put in place to go in that direction. So it's not a total failure. I just don't think we've gone far enough. I did an analysis recently where we looked at the gross metro product of the Tucson metro area and compared it to the 5 peer markets immediately bigger than Tucson and the 5 peer markets immediately smaller than Tucson. So there's 11 cohorts in this group, with Tucson being right in the middle, and we were number 10 out of those 11 markets in terms of our gross metro product, sum total of goods and services produced. We were 50% less than the average for that cohort group. We were way behind Birmingham, Alabama in that group. So as a metric for what we need to do to increase our vitality, there's a scorecard that's irrefutable. It's the U.S. Office of Management and Budget numbers. One thing that troubles me about the City Council is the fact that there seems to be an inordinate amount of spending that's being okayed. We've got pay raises. We've got now a $13 million announcement about a deficit on the streetcar, and only Steve Kozachik stood up and said, wait a minute, how are we going to pay for all this? And how did this happen? There seemed to be a lot of groupthink that went along with those extra expenses. Jonathan Rothschild, a man I've enjoyed working with immensely and still do enjoy working with immensely, came out and said, we've just about cut every expense we can. We've got to focus on revenue generation. Well, that means economic vitality, growing businesses that are here, welcoming new companies that want to come here, and helping to make more helping to make it possible for more people to get good-paying jobs. And we're not seeing that. We're not seeing the embrace of economic opportunity. Otherwise, the city, which is the only major entity that has not gone on record in favor of the F-35 coming to the 162nd, they would be on record along with the county, the University of Arizona, all the townships, and the business community. We missed a chance with Grand Canyon University. We have Rosemont Mine. The city's been totally silent on that, and that's billions of dollars of economic vitality for our community, but the city has been nowhere to be found in terms of embracing that. So my admonition to the council is you can't have it both ways. You can't cut your expenses out of your budget deficit. You've got to increase revenue, as the mayor says that he wants to do, but we can't keep turning away opportunity and do that.
And Mark, what are you hearing as your new post over there at Inside Tucson Business from the business community?
In terms of the city council?
And the city of Tucson and business friendliness and all the rest of that.
There has been, it's the still same long-standing frustration that there has been, mostly with the process of getting a business started. and how long it takes and the various hoops that you have to go through. And the council and the city have been talking about reforming that for years, and they have done some reforms, but they're still looking to do more reforms, and that's one of the biggest frustrations. Some of the other things in terms of business recruitment, those are more big picture things, and individual businesses are mostly looking to, I got to get my business, make my business successful. But for some of those businesses, for instance, with the mine, that's completely out of the hands of the council. They can make a statement of support if they wanted to, but that wouldn't really move the needle in terms of whether the Forest Service is going to approve it or the federal government is going to approve it. But it would make a statement that they're in support of it. But one of the things that they could be making that statement for is that there's the mine is going to contract with a lot of small businesses in Tucson as subcontractors who are going to provide a lot of services to that mine, and those would benefit the city of Tucson. Those would provide jobs, and so those are some of the things that I think that I see with frustration with. On the other hand, I see a lot of encouragement, and some of it doesn't have anything to do with the council. Some of the stuff that's happening kind of organically on its own with the entrepreneurial stuff that's going on downtown, how downtown revitalization kind of happened all on its own despite the best efforts of Tucson, Rio Nuevo to screw it up. They're encouraged by that. The streetcar, even though it has got a funding gap, we've known it's going to have a funding gap for a long time. In 2010, they were talking about a $26 million funding gap. This is a $13 million funding gap now. We've known that we're going to have to borrow money to complete it all along. So I don't think that was really a surprise to anyone. I think that's being used as a political ploy. But along the streetcar route, there has been $300 million of investment in new buildings and stuff that is going in. You've got in the days past, the neighborhood associations had so much pull politically with the council that a development as big as the West University development, there's 4 towers going in right now to the west of the university. It's completely changed the landscape of the university and its appearance. That had bitter opposition to that from the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And in the past, I would have thought the council might have backed down from that, and instead they stuck to their guns. They reached some compromises. It's not as tall as perhaps the developer wanted, but it's still going in. And so those are some encouraging signs. And then there's some other things happening outside of the city council. The changes here at the university, Tech Launch Arizona, I think is going to be a really big deal for the developing the economy of Tucson. We need to get this done now. We want to see economic development now because we're in a recession. We have higher unemployment than there is in other parts of the state, and so there's this push to let's get this solved now. But that type of economic development doesn't happen overnight. It's over long term, and I see some signs that there may be a kind of change in attitudes towards the city council with the mayor, with Steve Kozaczek, with Paul Cunningham. So from my own point of view, I'm not quite as pessimistic, but I still think we have a long way to go to really rebuild this economy. That's one of the things that will solve a lot of the problems in this town is if we can get more people to work higher paying jobs. It'll solve a lot of the problems with the schools. It is everything. And it's something that we haven't really talked about in this community in the past. The recession really brought it home how important it was.
And Annie, your thoughts on the Tucson City Council, its relative business friendliness, and the question of whether it's in support of economic development here?
Well, I think we see some exciting things happening. I agree with a lot of what Mark had to say. And, the streetcar, some people are trying to, I think, label it as a boondoggle. I think it's a real boon. And, let's remember that came, largely through federal stimulus funds. We did put some RTA funds in, but if the city has to pitch in some money, I think we're going to reap a huge return on that investment. What's going on downtown also is very, very encouraging. I think that we have some challenges as a city, and some of those are somewhat beyond the purview of the city council, but yet, they have to pay the price if, we don't have enough money to fund our schools. They can't do anything about that. And when you talk about trying to recruit good businesses to the city of Tucson, that is a key factor. So the fact that we have done so much with, I would say, so little, frankly, in terms of what we have been able to put in, the fact that we have now a pretty thriving downtown at the end of a recession. Not too long ago, we remember when that was just, tattoo parlor, skateboard, city. And now it's thriving, and you have places like the Maker House, Zero Craft, Gangplank, bringing all of these sort of creative types together. And what I don't know if the council could do something about this, but what it seems to me we need now is a way to link more of the venture capital with these types of efforts, and efforts that are going on at the university, efforts that are being generated with sort of this new creative class that's congregating in these new spaces. And you look at places like Silicon Valley, and that was their key. They had the venture capital matched up with people with great ideas. And Tucson, I think, could really take off. I think we have the potential to be in Austin, Texas. We really have a unique place where we live. I think interesting people like to come here and stay here. The university attracts them, but we lose people. We lose too many good, smart people because we don't have the things that keep them here. And I think, which are good, high-paying jobs. And so that's what we really have to put a focus on. But all of these are good developments. Some of the things that the council has been criticized for, Rosemont and F-35 and Grand Canyon University, I think that some of these weren't necessarily, Grand Canyon University might not have been the best fit for Tucson. I'm not sure they were really serious about coming here. Anyway, they discriminate against people who are gay. You get disciplined at Grand Canyon University. I don't think that was a good fit. And I think what we need are jobs from employers that don't discriminate, jobs from employers that don't pollute, that are cleaner jobs of the future. High-tech jobs, that's what they are. Solar jobs, that's what they are. That's what I'd like to see grown here in Tucson. And I think we can home grow a lot of these. So that's my perspective.
Mike, we've talked before about downtown. You've said that you're encouraged, at least, by some of the signs of the revitalization. Why do you think that's important?
Well, I think it's important for a lot of reasons. If we're ever going to be the kind of city that Anne-Eve just described, you have to have a heartbeat in the urban core. It has to be the center, the destination for those who live outside the urban core, and it has to be a place where the people who live in the urban core in a mixed-use environment want to stay. But it's got to be culture, entertainment, restaurants, shopping, living. It's got to be all of those things, as all great cities have a vibrant urban core. Richard Florida, the guy who wrote the book, The Rise of the Creative Class, has written another book, and it's called Who's Your City? And one of the conclusions you take away from that is that the whole notion of graduating from school and going to work has been turned completely 180 degrees, Jim. It used to be, when I was at that stage in life, that you went wherever the job was. If you needed to go to Chicago or Dallas or Albuquerque for a job, you went. And if they said, now you got to go to Timbuktu, you went to Timbuktu. That whole thing is backwards now. And now the jobs are going where the people are. And the people will go where they have a downtown urban core, and this is especially younger people, who are the replacements for the gray hairs who are leaving the workforce. So at the top of the list is having that downtown urban area that really, really is that hip, neat place to either live or to be a destination for the community. I think Michael Keith and the Downtown Partnership, and frankly, I think Jonathan Rothschild in the city and Fletcher McCusker and his board at Rio Nuevo have gone, in the last year and a half, 2 years, have gone light years ahead of where they were stuck and mired in their political wranglings before. So I think the synergies that the Downtown Tucson Partnership, Rio Nuevo, and the city have put together is probably the catalyst for what we're seeing now.
And you mentioned earlier education and the importance of that, and I want to talk about TUSD, Annie. We talked about it a little bit on this program a few weeks ago with H.T. Sanchez and your assessment of him, but there are many, many challenges facing the district. What do you think is key to turning this district around?
Well, I think Dr. Sanchez is putting together a really solid plan, and he is in the middle of crafting a strategic plan for the district, which, when he first came in, he asked the people working in the district, where's your strategic plan? What's the answer? We don't have a strategic plan. What? You don't have a strategic plan? Then how do you know where you're going, what you're doing? He went and talked with city business leaders to ask them, what jobs do you need for the future of the city of Tucson? So this is where, this is how he works, how his mind works. He's doing a facilities review. So we don't just keep making willy-nilly decisions about how the best use of our buildings is. And I think that he is a real cause for hope for TUSD. And what we know from businesses that want to come into the city of Tucson, want to come into the state of Arizona, is you have to have high quality schools. And that is one of the very first things that they look for. And that's a challenge in Arizona because we have now chronically underfunded our schools. But there are some real bright spots within TUSD. And one of the problems is the district does not get the word out about those. So you have Sabino is an A+, National Blue Ribbon school, the only public school in the state to achieve that. You have, one of the teachers at Tucson High, People Magazine's Teacher of the Year. You have science winners of national science awards coming out of Tucson High. And so there's a lot of excellence that actually goes on in the district, but the district has a lot of other challenges to face. And unfortunately, I think they've gotten caught up in a lot of political fights that not necessarily of their own making, but they have become the scapegoat in some of those political fights. And that has hurt, it's hurt them. And so I think I hope is going to move them out of sort of being on a negative, story on the front page of the Star every day, into, something a little bit more positive. And I mean, what this does is it benefits obviously the business climate in the city, but it benefits our kids. I mean, they have to have quality schools where they can go, and TUSD still educates the majority of kids in Tucson. I think the real danger zone for him, though, is the board. And specifically, I'll just say, Mark Stegeman on the school board. Mark has gone rogue numerous times and has made the jobs of our prior superintendents very, very difficult. And I would hate to see him do the same thing to Dr. Sanchez that has happened to some of our other school board superintendents. So my hope is that Dr. Sanchez is a very smart man. I hope he can navigate that as well as he's navigated a lot of other challenges.
And you mentioned the problems with the newspaper on the front page all the time does not help the business recruitment, Mike.
No, it doesn't. Annie brings up a good point that there are a lot of positive stories about TUSD. There are a lot of positive stories about Tucson. Unfortunately, what sells newspapers, what sells news, period, is bad news. And so we do need to do a better job of publicizing our victories and publicizing our positives. At the same time, we can't hide from the things that we need to improve on. And so we're going to continue at the Tucson Metro Chamber to work on both the positives and the things that we need to improve.
All right, about half a minute here left, Mark, but you wanted to touch upon an important decision from the Attorney General's office regarding public records.
Right, so the state's public records law is pretty expansive. It says all public records are available to inspection at any time during business hours. But if you want a copy, you have to pay for it. And a lot of public agencies, especially a lot of police agencies, have been using that as a way, the copying fees as a way to kind of chill access. And a ruling by the Attorney General says that now they can't charge for some of these copies, and that you can take your own photo of the copy and make your own copy without having to pay for it. And I think it's a great thing for public access and the public's right to know in Arizona.
All right, and we're going to have to leave it there. Thank all of you guys for being here. We will be right back with some closing thoughts. That's our show for today, but you can learn more about politics by visiting azpm.org or by following us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Jim Nintzel. Thanks for watching another edition of AZ Illustrated Politics.